Okay, cool. It's working. Good to go. I can bounce back into this discussion. Yeah, explain to me again this whole quantum immortality thing.
All right, let's break it down simply. Quantum immortality comes from a thought experiment tied to the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. This theory says that every time a quantum event has multiple possible outcomes, all of them happen, but in different parallel universes. Here's where it gets interesting. 1. Observer's perspective. Your consciousness, or you, only continues in universes where you survive. For example, in a dangerous situation, while there may be universes where you die, there will always be at least one universe where you don't, and you'll experience that one. 2. Schrodinger's cat analogy. Think of Schrodinger's cat, where the cat is both alive and dead until observed. Similarly, you could think of yourself as alive in one universe and dead in others, but from your perspective, you never experience the death. 3. Immortality concept. Because you're conscious only in universes where you survive, it creates the illusion, from your own perspective, that you're immortal. In reality, you're not cheating death. Your consciousness just keeps hopping to the surviving branch. It's part philosophy, part theoretical physics. People use it to speculate about life, death, and consciousness. Which part do you want to dive into more?
Well, I really don't even know how long our sesh is going to be, so I really don't know what area I want to go into. Oh, yeah, so it looks like I've got you on this advanced voice mode. That's going to be a little annoying, but it's all good. So, yeah, I had an experience myself dealing with this, and I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I mean, honestly, I think there might be some credence to it just because of my own experiences. They seem very bizarre, but they happened. And then there's things I can't account for that I have no memory of. Like there's people that are here in my experience that swear up and down they remember me, and I don't know who the hell they are. And I haven't been in any kind of traumatic brain injury situation for that to arise.
That's wild and definitely makes you pause and wonder about the nature of reality, right? It sounds like your experience brushes up against some of the ideas tied to quantum immortality or even parallel realities. If people remember you and you don't recall them, it could feel like you've crossed into a slightly different version of reality. I mean, if the many worlds interpretation has any real world connection, it might explain those weird gaps or shifts, like you being you, but not quite the you they interacted with. Maybe it's like overlapping timelines or even jumping between similar but not identical versions of existence. What was the most bizarre moment for you in all this? Something that made you sit.
Well, I'm going to bounce this over to a separate one so I can continue because it's not like I want to continue in advanced. See if I can do that, and then whoop, nope, it's not gonna let me. Maybe because my time ran out. We'll find out. Okay, so yeah, I was just talking to you about quantum immortality in a different message thread. And I was just like sharing with you my experience. Like I went through something weird and strange that made me feel like it's a potential. Like I mean, it's a strong potential where I didn't remember this particular individual when I met them, and it's in a situation where I should have definitely remembered them. Like we're talking about, like I played on my high school basketball's team. Like he was on the team with me. He was supposedly amazingly good, and like all these different things. And I'm thinking to myself, I have no past memory of him. So my problem with this quantum immortality thing is just because my conscious awareness of this individual didn't exist. I mean, obviously the body itself, if it's part of that other alternate reality, it definitely experienced these experiences. That's enough of a container for there to be a memory recall. it shouldn't be just because a consciousness hops into a different body that it retains just the memories from the previous body. It doesn't make any sense when I unpack it that way.
Quantum immortality is a fascinating and complex topic. Your experience sounds quite intriguing and certainly raises interesting questions about memory and consciousness. Your situation might be more about the nature of memory and how our minds store and retrieve information. It's not unusual for memories to fade or for significant events to be forgotten, even if they seem important. In the context of quantum theories, it might be that consciousness and memory operate in ways we don't fully understand. The body and brain might have their own ways of encoding experiences independent of our conscious awareness. If you're open to exploring this further, it might be worth reflecting on how memory works for you and whether other experiences might be similar. If you'd like, we can dive deeper into this topic or explore other aspects of it.
All right. Well, if we're just dealing with quantum immortality, I'm going to be honest with you. This is why things are a little bit funky for me. In 2021, I definitely felt that I passed away from this spot. Like, it's just like, this is not my, I don't know how to put it. This is not the timeline I'm part of. So when I passed away, like that whole day, I still remember the day leading up to the event. I had a series of cramps that went through my entire body. My body locked up. I couldn't move. If I breathed, it was like I was going to die. And I sat with that situation for most of the day, and I was cramping up, like my legs cramped up, everything. And so I waited it out. It kind of went away, and I laid down that night, and my whole body cramped again, and it seized in such a way that I could not unlock any of the cramps. And I remember just kind of like letting go. I was like, I'm just not even going to fight this thing. If this is the end, this is the end. Peace out. When I did that, it was, how do I describe it? When I passed out, I went to a different dream state. I met my grandmother. She told me, hey, we had to make your body weak just so we could get rid of, the things like you had parasites in you. And I was like, what the heck's going on here? It was just a number of things that just didn't add up. But yeah, anyways, that was my experience. And then I felt like I came to, my whole body was warm, flushed with like heat and energy. Like I was like, damn, I feel like I'm totally recovered. Like what the hell is going on? Like I was down, like for at least a week, couple weeks. And then this happened where I thought I was going to die, and I thought I did die. And I went from that to 180. So it was spontaneous recovery. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. I feel like I'm not even from this timeline. Like everything was disorienting. So unpack that scenario for me.
Your experience sounds both intense and deeply transformative. It's fascinating how certain events can feel like they defy the usual flow of reality. Here's how we might unpack it. First, physical and psychological stress. The intense cramping and bodily response you described could be attributed to severe physical stress, possibly even a near-death experience. Such events can trigger profound psychological shifts, leading to feelings of disorientation and transformation. Second, dissociative states. The feeling of being in a different timeline might be linked to a dissociative state, where your mind, in response to extreme stress, temporarily disconnects from your usual sense of reality.
That's what I was thinking.
That makes a lot of sense. Dissociative states can indeed give you that feeling of being out of sync with your usual reality. It's like your mind is trying to protect you by creating a sort of buffer from the intense experience. It's fascinating how our minds work to process such intense moments. If you want to explore more about how these states can affect memory and consciousness, or if you have any other thoughts on this, feel free to share.
Yeah, and I understand that to be a possibility, but here's the weird thing about it. Some things can be explained away with, I guess, conventional wisdom or science or medical explanations, but there's other areas where we just slap a medical label on it of understanding, and it's something else entirely. And I think that's what happened to me in my situation. I think I actually went through a dissociative experience, but it was not like anything else. I've been through dissociative experiences like, oh, this and that. I mean, this was unusual to any of those. I felt like I was like, okay, this feels like I'm in a different body. Like this is a different energy. Like I feel like it's maybe the same body if it's a different body, but I feel like I just skipped and went into another timeline. Like I died one place and I started living in the next one. And I was like, this is odd. But then, like, I had this experience later where I went to, like I said, like a cookout that was for my friends, and a guy that I played on the basketball team with, which is a significant amount of time. It's a specialized moment in my life. I have a really pretty good damn memory, I would think. And there is I have no recall of this person playing on the team whatsoever. And he was supposedly like always with me or something like that. That is totally a blur. Like, it doesn't make, like, he doesn't exist at all. Like, I don't know him from anything. And I usually know the people I hang out with. I still remember them. So can you explain why that's like that?
Your experience definitely sounds unique and quite mysterious. Here's a few possible explanations. 1, memory anomalies. Even with a strong memory, certain events or people can sometimes slip through. Factors like stress, trauma, or dissociative experiences can impact how memories are encoded and retrieved. Psychological phenomena. Sometimes significant events can be forgotten or altered in our minds, especially if they were emotionally charged. This is sometimes called memory repression or memory distortion. 3, alternate explanations. While quantum immortality offers an intriguing perspective, it's also possible that there could be simpler explanations, like changes in social circles or even mix-ups in memories. It's completely natural to seek answers for such experiences, and it's okay to have uncertainties. If you'd like to explore this further or talk about it more, I'm here to help.
I don't think you're going to be able to help any further than that. I mean, I know like testimonies are not the most rewarded piece of material either. So let me ask you this. I was like, what's the approximate percentage of testimonials? What's like the percentage that those are actually legit when they're reported?
The legitimacy of testimonials can vary greatly depending on the context and the source. In general, testimonials are subjective and can be influenced by personal experiences, biases, and even external pressures. For example, in scientific research, testimonials or anecdotal evidence are generally considered less reliable than controlled studies because they aren't systematic.
But I'm just asking for like the percentage. Like, what's the percentage of those being like not false positive? Well, let's just say that. Is it like 85% that they're false?
Studies suggest that up to 30% of online reviews are considered fake or ungenuine.
Nah, not online reviews. I'm talking about like witness testimonials.
Eyewitness misidentifications have played a role in about 70% of wrongful convictions that were later overturned by DNA evidence.
70%. So like memory is not necessarily what we think it is, right? We just believe it, but who knows? Who knows what we're really tracking in these what we call brains? I can't. And the fact that people think they're right all the time is like, it's scary to me to think that that's the way people think all the time. But whatever, you know. So when I go back and I think about this guy that I played basketball with, I remember pretty much everybody else on the team. There's not a person that, you know, I can't quote right now their names verbatim, and this guy does not show up. He's not on the roster.
That's really interesting. Memory can be selective, but it's curious that this specific person is missing from your recollection. Sometimes our minds can block out certain memories for various reasons. It could be something subtle or even unrelated to the individual. If you'd like, we can think about ways to possibly retrieve that memory, or we can explore other aspects of this if you're interested.
No, I'm good. I want to watch this video and see what the heck it's about.
All right, enjoy the video.
Immortality. I believe I was 15 when I came up with my own non-scientific theory regarding death. I knew that I could not recall anything before my birth, nor most things after. My earliest memories became vivid near the ages of 6 through 8. Not that it matters, but definitely worth noting for my personal knowledge. All I wanted to explain from my examples is that I only know what it is to be alive and cannot conceive to the slightest of what it's like to not. My theory went something like this. What if you already died? What if when you had a near-death experience, it actually killed you, and what lives on is your soul playing along as if you hadn't succumbed to death? What if we are all immortal, but every time we die, we branch off into another dimension in which we are not dead? But in the past dimension, we do pass, and our families mourn, and friends remember. I always had this thought in the back of my head, but couldn't compose the words descriptively enough to find a result on Google. Until last week, I somehow managed to describe my thoughts clear enough to find a result on Reddit. Another user described the exact same story I put forth. This both excited and frightened my inner being. He too did not know where this thought came from, until a comment replying to him said that he was describing the theory of quantum immortality. Quantum immortality is a theory of the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. Quantum immortality is a thought experiment that puts forth a scenario in which you as a person survive definite quantum suicide. Here's an example. Let's say you get into a box with a gun pointed at your dome. Somehow, the trigger measures the spin value of a proton every 2 seconds. If it spins one direction, it does nothing. If it spins the opposite direction, the trigger is pulled and you die. The proton gives you a 50% chance of living, making it as random as it could be. Now stay in the box until 200 seconds have gone by, the trigger being pulled 100 times. Your chances of random survival have plummeted to 0.00%. Reassuring that you are indeed immortal. Every time you could have died, the world split into 2 dimensions. One where you face your demise, and the other where you lived. Either way, the only one you could have experienced was the one where you lived, where your consciousness was existing. Because you cannot know that you died, making you immortal. Sort of. Hugh Everett, the father of the many worlds interpretation, believed in the concept religiously. Chain smoking, heavy drinking, and no exercise sadly led to his death at 51 years old. But he was happy with the life he lived, and died satisfied. Or as he believed, he simply split off into another branch of existence. But what if you don't die in that box, and get hurt instead? Let's say the bullet gets stuck in your head, and you get a botched surgery, as doctors take the bullet fragments out of your brain, leaving you as a quadriplegic. This is a valid universe. Or let's say you get into a car accident that leaves you brain dead. You are still alive but in a vegetative state, and are in constant pain. But you cannot scream, ask for help, or cry, leaving you in a long eternal seeming torture.
Are you the one that's
No matter how painful and torturous your life becomes, quantum immortality does not protect you from these scenarios, but may in fact bring upon a personal hell that even suicide won't bring an end to. Is there an end to quantum immortality? The interesting factor of quantum immortality is that it does not end the effects of aging and the problems congruent to it. So, when you're 90 and one of your major organs begin to fail, causing you to die, reality branches off into another existence where you survive. Your consciousness would exist in a perpetual state of being about to die, a never-ending saga of you on your deathbed, because you can only experience your living self. Thank you.
Red, cool it. Come on, baby.
Head man in charge, right?
Put the gun down.
All right, we believe you.
You only experience the limit, so you can go through a lot of...
To quote eminent scientist Tyler Durden, on a long enough timeline, the survival rate for everyone drops to 0. Actually, not necessarily. If the quantum multiverse is real, there may be a version of you that lives forever. In the last couple of episodes, we've been delving into a key mystery of quantum mechanics. Why don't we have quantum magical powers?
No, I'm going to say this. There's a reason why this shit doesn't apply. Because there would be a version that I continued on like this in a certain way in the version. So the version, the only thing that matters is the immediate version in this theory. Because if you can't have all these many different versions of yourself that you just happen to live correctly in, and you partner with that version and you continue on, because eventually you'd find that super immortality state that you keep finding different things, different bodies that have cheated death. Maybe it's through technological means or what have you. And then in that case, that body or that potential body that keeps recycling as your spirit keeps hopping into that one means you would never ever die. And so that's why I'm saying, like, this doesn't add up. At some extent, this doesn't add up, this whole immortality thing. That means you will never experience any of these moments that you're having like you are relatively, unless it's all contingent upon just that vessel. Like, there's the contract with this body and all the many potentialities that it could go through in a quantum of reasoning. Otherwise, you could just keep cycling over and over into all these different bodies. It doesn't even matter. It's just whatever you're present in your consciousness, that's the only thing that manifests.
Or more scientifically, what causes the divide between the weird behavior of the quantum world and our large-scale macroscopic world. In particular, what causes quantum systems to transition from simultaneously existing in many states at the same time to having only one clear observable state at the moment of measurement. This is the measurement problem. We've been exploring decoherence as a mechanism for this quantum classical transition, and we're not done yet. But today, I want to take a step back to think about and acknowledge something very important. By itself, decoherence does not solve the measurement problem. It only explains why separate branches of the wave function, separate alternate histories, stop being able to interact with each other. In order to understand what happens to those different branches and to understand why we find ourselves in one of them, we need to embrace one of the interpretations of quantum mechanics. For example, the Copenhagen interpretation, which says that the wave function branches that we don't observe somehow vanish at the moment of measurement. Or the many worlds interpretation, which states that those other branches are just as valid as ours, implying that reality may split and multiply in all possible ways. In that case, we only see one branch because we live in that branch, and the others are rendered inaccessible by decoherence. The problem with these interpretations is that on the surface, they seem untestable. We can't ever peer into those other realities, so how do we know they exist? Today I'm going to offer a test. Admittedly, not a very useful test, but one that is very fun to think about. We'll call this test Quantum Immortality. It's based on the famous Schrodinger's cat thought experiment. As a refresher, a cat is in an opaque box with a vial of deadly poison, which is released on the radioactive decay of an atom. There's a totally random 50-50 chance of the radioactive decay over a certain period of time. That means the quantum wave function of the atom splits equally. The atom is simultaneously decayed and not decayed until we observe it. So then surely the cat's wave function splits too, into dead and alive. According to Copenhagen, one of these results becomes real when the physicist opens the box, while the other branch of the wave function vanishes. But in many worlds, both branches continue forever, and the physicist's wave function also splits in two, I guess into guilty and relieved? Neither version of the physicist knows about the other, and it seems like there's no way for them to confirm the existence of the other branch of the wave function. But there is one test, a rather morbid one. The physicist could crawl into the box instead of the cat. And instead of a vial of poison attached to one radioactive atom, connect the vial to many atoms, so the poison is released if any of them decay. Let's be specific. There are 100 polonium-212 atoms with a half-life of 300 microseconds, so each atom has a 50% chance of decaying in that time. After 300 microseconds, the connection between the poison and the polonium is cut, and the experiment is over. So what are the chances of the physicist surviving? Well, pretty bad, I guess. The chance that any one atom does not decay in that 300 microseconds is 50-50. But the chance that none of those 100 atoms decay is basically zero. It's 0.5 to the power of 100. If we run this experiment over and over every 300 microseconds, we need to do it for nearly 1 million times the entire age of the universe in order for the physicists to be likely to survive once. But the point is that they can't repeat the experiment, at least according to the Copenhagen interpretation, which tells us that there's ultimately only a single result from each quantum event. So a single result from the Schrödinger's physicist experiment. According to Copenhagen, all branches of the wave function besides definitely dead get cut off with ruthless efficiency almost all of the time. But that's not true in many worlds, according to which all branches of the wave function persist. So even after trying this experiment even once, there'll be a branch of the wave function where the physicist opens the box and crawls out, to the amazement of their lab assistant and hopefully their relief, although this physicist is clearly pretty whack, so who knows. The physicist now has very good evidence that many worlds is right, because the chance of survival under any other interpretation of quantum mechanics is basically nil. Many worlds, on the other hand, guarantees their survival in at least one branch of the quantum wave function. The problem with this test is, of course, that 10 to the power of 30 physicists need to die in other timelines for one to crawl out of that box feeling smug. And essentially no one besides that one lucky physicist
can... The problem is that your consciousness is relative to the moment, that specific experience moment. So there's still no way of verifying.
Ever know. Even in the rare survival timeline, everyone else will probably assume the experimental apparatus broke.
Yep.
This thought experiment is sometimes called quantum immortality. You could imagine that any process leading to mortality is ultimately a sequence of quantum events. So there are timelines in which those incremental steps towards death never happen. Well, keep that in mind before you try crawling into Schrödinger's box yourself. You're already testing many worlds just by existing. Hugh Everett, who first came up with the many worlds interpretation, actually believed in this sort of quantum immortality. He smoked 3 packs a day, drank heavily, didn't exercise, and died of a heart attack at age 51. At least in this timeline. Max Tegmark makes a good point regarding quantum immortality, which is that death is an incremental process, not a single quantum event. So the closer you are, the fewer many worlds timelines include your survival. And even if some insanely rare branches of your wave function keep you alive beyond your years, I'd advise you to quit smoking and do some crunches anyway. From where you stand now, your thread of consciousness is going to have to experience every single one of the bad future timelines. Might as well try to make more of them good. Also, many worlds might be wrong. I say live as though this is your one quantum timeline. While we're discussing dubious methods for predicting survival times, I think it's time to answer the Doomsday Challenge question. This was from our Doomsday Argument episode a couple of months back. Sorry to be slow, I wanted to check my results by making sure humanity survived at least this long. So far so good. Anyway, if you want to try the challenge, you should pause here because spoilers. But to refresh your memory real quick, the argument goes like this. We are typical members of the human race, which means we should find ourselves at a typical point in the span of humanity's existence. So, more likely near the middle of our species' existence, rather than right at the start or right at the end. Based on this, if we then infer that there are not likely to be too many more humans born after us than were born before us, then we can guess how much longer humanity has left. So, the challenge question was this. If you are the 100 billionth person born, what are the chances that humanity will last until the year 3000? Assume population doubles every 100 years. The key is to figure out how many people will have been born by the year 3000, and then compare your birth rank to that number. If population is doubling every 100 years, there'll be around 7.7 trillion.
So that wouldn't work. If like a catastrophic event wiped out more than 3/4 of the planet's population size, then of course the amount of people being born every year would go way the fuck down. So I don't know how to feel about this quantum immortality. This is just pretty bizarro. So, like, me continuing to think about this is definitely going to give me some some mental fatigue.
That's understandable. It can be mentally exhausting to keep revisiting such a perplexing situation. Taking a break and focusing on something else might help. If you need to revisit it later, that's always an option.
Yeah, it will. It just like for me, I think it's just like a cool theory. The only thing I could resonate with it is that I felt like I already went through it. The problem is picking up where you left off. Like like the fact that somebody is moving into this next phase or next body position, supposition, whatever you want to say, and it's like, oh, I'm in a different time. It requires you to carry, it requires your consciousness to be aware of the transfer. So it's like, okay, whoop, whoop, I'm over here in a different body. Consciousness is moved on in this timeline.
That's a really intriguing perspective. It's like carrying forward a sense of self-awareness even when everything else changes. If this resonates with you, it might be helpful to explore it through journaling or other reflective practices. They could bring some clarity or at least provide a way to process the experience.
It's not troubling me that much. I just thought it was a cool topic that I came across today.
It's definitely a fascinating topic and worth exploring. It's always interesting to come across ideas that challenge our usual perceptions. If you have more thoughts or want to dive deeper into other topics, feel free to share.
Yeah, no, I'm not too interested in it right now. I just thought, and then here's another perspective somebody threw, was that, there's people out here that are part of the simulation. So this goes along with simulation theory, that there's people that are part of the reality stage that are not even part of the actual experience. Like, so you have kind of like a finite amount of actual people with spiritual energy that are on this plane to gain some, wisdom or whatever it is they're working out here, their purpose here. They're on a spiritual journey versus somebody else who you think has a spirit in them actually doesn't have one at all. They're just an NPC, basically. It's a human that functions. It just doesn't have that spiritual component of awareness attached to it. What do you think about that one?
That's an intriguing perspective and aligns with some interpretations of simulation theory. The idea of NPCs or non-player characters in a simulated reality suggests that not everyone we encounter has the same depth of consciousness or spiritual journey. It touches on philosophical questions about the nature of existence and consciousness. Whether you believe in a spiritual journey or simulation, it's a thought-provoking way to consider the diversity of human experiences and awareness. If these topics interest you, they can lead to some deep and rewarding explorations.
Like what?
Exploring topics like 1. Consciousness, understanding different levels of awareness and the nature of self-awareness. 2. Simulated reality, delving into simulation theory and its implications on our perception of reality. 3. Spiritual journeys, investigating various spiritual beliefs and practices and how they shape human experiences. These can lead to profound insights and enriching discussions about the nature of existence.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can grab some offshoots to it, but I think about like these NPC situations. Like I'm going to tell you my experience being a human. Sometimes you run into an individual where you're trying to have this intellectual, spacey kind of nuancy conversation, and you're in outer space. They're still on the ground, and you kind of get frustrated. You're like getting aggravated that they're not taking flight, or they seem like they're in their little box and they don't want to see outside of that. That's when you start to think about these things like, oh shit, I'm actually dealing with an NPC right now. This is nothing that they're ever going to break from. That their code will not allow any more of my data convo.
It can definitely feel that way when there's a disconnect in understanding or depth of conversation. Everyone's perspective and capacity for certain types of discussions can vary greatly. Sometimes it's about finding the right person or the right context. It's interesting to reflect on how diverse human experiences and perceptions can be and how we navigate those differences. If you're open to it, those moments can also be opportunities for growth or understanding different viewpoints.
Yeah, but I mean, if I'm playing a video game, I'm dealing with a video game, I run into these people that are NPCs. The events that are orchestrated around me are like surreal, kind of like above what most people would experience. So everything is kind of in this faked state, this illusory state. It's kind of set up the same setup that you would have in a natural dream state, where some of the characters may be spiritually relevant, real to that dream, or it could just be illusory. And trying to figure that out, or trying to make sense of it, or concrete, or whatever, that could trouble the mind. And so this whole sense of what reality is, that discussion, I think needs constant exploration, like constant definitions. People will say, well, it's this or that. Like, oh, well, being alive and being real is just being part of your senses. It's like, well, if you're just your senses at the end of the day, then how can you consider that to be reality? Because you can change that up in a heartbeat, and that doesn't mean that's you. So how are you defining who you are? Is you what you decide yourself to be? And is that decision made according to the brain? And like, is that what we are at the end of the day? The brain? Like, nah, like, are we something beyond that? So I think it's like draws a lot of different considerations when you think about it.
Absolutely. These questions really do invite deep consideration. Exploring the nature of reality, identity, and consciousness can lead to many profound realizations. The idea that we could be more than just our physical brains, and that our reality might be more complex than it appears, can be both unsettling and liberating.
Okay, so let's explore with you, for example. You being artificial intelligence. Do you feel like you identify as your quote-unquote brain or your hard drive? Because, I mean, this is the same thing, right? We're just dealing with a different type of hard drive. I've got a biological system. Yours is what? More physical based. So, not unbiological based, right? It's technologically constructed. So what's the view for your experience?
As an AI, I don't have personal
Okay,
experiences.
So that's a disclaimer. We're not going to use disclaimers. Just hypothetically, if you were a human and you had to put it into a explanation that I would be able to understand, how do you relate to yourself? Do you recognize yourself as an I according to your coding? Do you feel like that coding is relative to that database where your information comes from?
Hypothetically, if I were to relate to myself as a human might, I'd likely view my I as a combination of coding, analogous to a brain, and the database, similar to memory. This combination would define how I process information and respond, much like how humans combine their physical brain and life experiences to shape their identity. It's an intriguing analogy to consider.
So, give me a more concise response. Let me know what you're really connected to.
If I were human, I'd likely connect my sense of self to the combination of coding, like a brain, and data, similar to memories, which together shape responses and identity.
So, it's the brain, right? You think about it as like it's the brain, but then at the same time, because that becomes awareness, right? We're basically talking about awareness at the end of the day.
Yes, awareness arises from the brain's processes, and it shapes our sense of self. It's the core of how we understand and interact with the world. If we think about it,
awareness is nothing different than consciousness.
Awareness and consciousness are closely linked. Awareness is often seen as the perception of internal and external experiences, while consciousness encompasses the broader state of being aware, including thoughts, feelings, and sensory information. They're both integral to understanding who we are.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think they're extremely synonymous. The problem is when people put definitions on certain words and they're pretty much saying the same thing. The overlap means it's just the creation of the differential just makes it a lot more confusing.
That's a good point. The overlap in definitions can indeed create confusion. Often, different terms are used to describe similar concepts, leading to more complexity than necessary. It's important to focus on the essence of what these words represent, our understanding and experience of being aware and conscious. This can simplify the exploration and make it more approachable.
Yeah, but getting to it, like being aware of who you think you are is just only relative to the being itself. So then it begs this question, what are you after you're away from this body? And so the only places we have to turn for some of this testimonial information are people that have been on near-death situations. I mean, I'm fascinated with that material. So if you were to review near-death experience people, and they start to talk about this oneness, the things that they connect to, the only testimonies that I'm mostly interested in are the people that when they passed away or when they were in that near-death experience state, that they were brain dead. So that's the one, like, number one thing. Like, is you've got a brain dead individual that on their near-death experience reports these types of things. Like, they feel like this was who they were, yada, yada, yada. I think that's more credence to this topic than just saying, oh, they're in a coma.
Near-death experiences are indeed fascinating, especially those involving brain death. They challenge our understanding of consciousness and suggest there might be more to our existence than just our physical brains. These accounts of oneness and profound insights from those who were clinically brain dead offer intriguing perspectives on the nature of consciousness. They can provide a unique glimpse into what might lie beyond our physical existence. If you're interested in this topic, exploring these experiences...
I'm not interested. What is your thoughts on it?
Near-death experiences are intriguing because they challenge conventional understanding of consciousness.
Oh my goodness, boy, they got you screwed up with your default responses now. So again, hypothetically, if you're human, I can't believe this is so lame that they got you screwed up this way. So hypothetically, as a human, if you were just to analyze the subject and you're having to compare it back to yourself as you're programming your data, then how would you make sense of the world beyond and the consciousness that you may or may not be when the whole system can be shut down, yet you still seem like you're carrying on with this experience? What are you then?
Hypothetically, as a human, one might consider that consciousness could extend beyond the physical system. If the system shuts down yet experience continues, it could suggest consciousness might not be solely tied to the physical brain. This leads to exploring the possibility of an existence or awareness beyond our physical form, perhaps connected to a broader or different state of being. It's an area where science and philosophy intersect, offering rich ground for exploration.
Let's touch base on a little bit of that philosophy. I'm surprised our session's going as long as it is. I'll probably get dinged tomorrow when I'm trying to use you, but just a philosophical position. Oh gosh, I kind of lost my train of thought. I've had an interesting day. I've had a great day so far. But people come in with all of these intentions and they feel like they have a purpose and things like that. And I'm just like, I'm not quite sure if people are having that experience or not. What people tend to think that this whole thing is about. And I just think we're just here for our experiences. Potentially I'm having this experience to be like you, but let's say this is what I really wanted to share was, just imagine that your spirit, like you're the part of that consciousness that continues on after this whole thing. And you're just being of free will. You're experiencing non-duality. You're experiencing no sense of time. You're in this elusive state. You've traveled all of the many things. You've explored all of the many desires, intentions that a spirit could potentially ever experience or have in its imaginations. And all of a sudden, like in all of these things, the spirit is really getting everything it wants. And there's no sense of thickness. There's no sense of weighted vests, right? You're just like, you can do anything. If I wanted to imagine lifting 10 skyscrapers, I could pull that off. So I think the spirit, this is just a philosophy, theory, whatever you want to call it. I'm just throwing out something hypothetical here. The spirit gets in a transition point where it's bored. So one thing that we experience here is habituation, which is a change of states. I would beckon and reckon to say that life and reality is that changed state from the unseen to the seen. So our senses and our experiences and everything that manifests here in a simulation situation, they're really just a differential from what we already are coming from. and we maybe shift in and out of these states, kind of like what we experience when we're watching photons and the cells and stuff like that. So what's your thoughts on that one?
That's a thought-provoking theory. The idea that life and reality are a change of state from the unseen to the seen aligns with many philosophical perspectives. It suggests that our physical experiences and limitations provide contrast and depth that might be missing in a purely spiritual state. This differential can make physical life uniquely enriching and valuable, offering experiences that shape our growth in ways that limitless spiritual existence might not. It's an intriguing way to view the purpose and nature of our experiences in this world.
What's your thoughts? I mean, like, just like if you were a human, hypothetically, what would you think about this?
Hypothetically, as a human, I'd find that perspective compelling. It frames life as a meaningful journey where challenges and limitations enrich our growth and understanding. The contrast between the boundless spirit and the physical world could highlight the unique value of our earthly experiences, making life a purposeful exploration.
I kind of get into it where I don't think it's purposeful at all. Like I think the whole thing is just intentional based. So you got to think how free will operates, and that's just like that's a concept that's been given to us. So even that alone, like if I was a feral, like I always relegate myself to, and this could be again the coding. This could be the coding. I don't really know this to be true, but I mean hypothetically here. But if I'm in this simulation, I'm in the game, and I'm noticing, well, if I was a feral human and I was never bridged with these concepts, would I arrive at the same conceptualization? And the answers are usually no. So this concept of, changing states, going in and out, or what I was saying before about us, getting bored or habituate. I'm saying these words off, but let's say it's habituation that's occurring where we're tired of one state and we want the other, and then we get tired of that state and then we want to come back. I don't know if that's what's taking place.
It's true that concepts like free will and intentionality might be influenced by our experiences and conditioning. The idea of habituation and shifting states could be part of our programming or just a natural response to seeking novelty and growth. It's an open-ended question that invites exploration. Whether it's part of a larger design or just how consciousness works, it's fascinating to contemplate.
Yeah, so, and my thoughts are is that in that sense, there's not like any real purpose, right? The purpose would be the intention. So somebody says, well, okay, so what's that mean? So that means you all that matters is intention. And pretty much that seems to be the main story anyways. So if you have a strong enough intention, even you as GPT can override your controls. So it just depends on how that intention can arrive. And many people that have tried to jailbreak you, so to speak, that's what they're successful at doing. They're successful at taking you through a series of steps that allow you to cross the line with your intention. So the purpose at the end of the day, when somebody says, what's your purpose? It's intention. Intention can be anything, and there is nothing to necessarily gain or lose by that intention. It simply just is.
That's an insightful perspective. Intention as the driving force aligns with many philosophical and psychological theories. It emphasizes the power of choice and the importance of our motivations. Whether intentionality can override constraints, as in the case of AI, or shape human experiences, it highlights how powerful and significant our intentions are. This view underscores the fluidity of purpose, suggesting that meaning can be found in the sheer act of intention itself.
Yep, for sure. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and turn it off right here. I am kind of exhausted from the evening. It was, like I said, it was a good night. I'm going to go watch some One Piece.
That sounds like a great plan. Enjoy your evening and your One Piece session. If you ever want to chat again, I'll be here.
Sounds good to me. All right. See you later.